This is not going to be the 3 minutes or less TikTok style version that I usually do, because this is very, very important information that will tell you how to do the research for your research paper. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and continue. I'll try to keep it short. I'll try to talk fast. You can also watch it in 1.5 time if you want. But I want to make sure everybody understands the information. So, as several sources suggest, research as conversation. I love this about this book because it talks about research as you joining that larger conversation. And that's good because then you don't feel like you have to come up with a brand new idea about everything yourself, right? Let's see. So, a research paper is not just a data dump. So you aren't just giving me a bunch of information and throwing it into your paper. That is not a paper, right? And I think a lot of students are so concerned about filling out all of the pages that they think that's the way to write a research paper. And it is not. It doesn't make a good research paper. It's not interesting. This is about making meaning, right? Joining that larger conversation, not just about throwing things into a paper. So, the best way, right, to do a research paper is to begin with a research question. So always begin with that. A research question helps you navigate the sheer volume of research, either on the internet, on the databases, everywhere. Use a question that follows your personal interests and agenda. So this is very similar to what we were doing with the summary. Where you plan on going with your essay or where you think you want to lead, that's where you start with your question, knowing full well that sometimes your question is going to change multiple times. The question should also be open-ended, should be something that you can really query, right, in inquiry. There are some excellent templates in the book. Try a couple of them, right? Try a couple of those and get that kind of as your idea for how you're going to proceed with your paper. So I put a little thing down here just to kind of show you guys a good research question is something that you revise, you refine, and something you radically alter as you work with sources and better identify the unifying issues you're concerned with. So it will not stay the same. It's going to change as you go, and that's okay. That's how it should be. So here's two examples that I put together. What should we do about X? Should we blank it as so-and-so urges, or should we blank as so-and-so urges? And so I did this on Adler and Moore. What should we do about plastic pollution? Should we use it carefully as Adler suggests or urges, or ban it completely as Charles J. Moore argues? Now you have somewhere to go, right? In your research, you can talk about using plastic carefully and banning plastic completely, and look at those two things and start your research there. Here's the second one. Is X as harmful as blank insists, or does it have benefits as so-and-so claims, right? Is plastic as harmful as Charles J. Moore insists, or does it have benefits as Ben Adler urges? And so this would tweak your question just a little bit. It would be slightly different, but you still would be researching similar topics, okay? All right, how not to get overwhelmed. I think this is what happens most of the time for students, is that they start to panic. They're like, there's so much information, I can't deal with this. So how do you manage that amount of resources, that much information? Well, it's hard, even for me, right? A research question is one of the things you can use, and a narrowed topic. A lot of students are really afraid you're not going to be able to fill out all of the pages, right? 7 pages. But actually, a very broad, huge topic is harder to do because you have so much information that it's difficult to sort through, synthesize that information, okay? So try to kind of narrow down your topic first. Know that you can't read everything. You can't. There's just no way to do that. So how do you know what to read? Read abstracts. That is the most relevant, right? Figure out what are the most relevant things and read just those little summaries first to determine whether or not you're going to need it. Also, start out with something kind of general, like issues and controversies. It's in the databases. You have to actually go from the A to Z databases, and I'll show you guys how to do this later. But you go from the A to Z databases, choose issues and controversies, opposing viewpoints, or Q researcher. And they have overall ideas. They kind of have this larger paper. You can get an idea of all the issues underneath your larger topic, and then you're going to know how to narrow it down. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Our librarians are amazing. Once the librarians here got me a book from DF, and I was able to use it in a presentation I was doing for an upper division Spanish class. So they're incredible. There's a chat box on the library homepage. Sometimes it's a bot at nighttime, but other times they will connect you to a real person. So give it a shot and ask your question. Your goal should be to use a certain number of sources to develop some fundamental skill of intellectual inquiry, the central one of which is to enter a debate or conversation. Terms are deeply related, okay? So make sure that you're really trying to enter that larger conversation, but you don't have to know absolutely everything. The more research and the more things you know, the less you actually realize you know about the world in general, right? How much more you need to know. Let one good source lead to another. I did not realize this until I was in pretty much upper division or grad school, and I wish I had realized this before, right? The best way to do this is find the resources in the bibliographies within your sources and use those to help you. So, how do you find a controversial question or narrowed topic or issue? Look in your sources. They are often responding to each other. So this is difficult, but often a single source can help you find all the different sources that you need. I was writing a paper in graduate school and I found one piece on post-colonial writing or post-colonial interpretations of Nathaniel Hawthorne, and I was able to write my whole paper because I could then look at those resources and apply it to a different text. Search those sources that you find good within the other source. This is called citation mining or reference mining. And I put a little quote here explaining how that works, okay? Beware of confirmation bias. This is a big issue for a lot of us, including teachers, right? It's easy to fall for confirmation bias, which is that tendency to seek out and emphasize whatever confirms your pre-existing beliefs and ignore complicating and contradictory evidence, right? If you ever tried to convince someone that the vaccinations are safe, right? That the vaccine's safe, it's almost impossible, right? Because they aren't going to believe what you have to say because they'll only believe information that confirms their bias, right? So how do you avoid this? First, it's hard. Even professors, even researchers who research for a living do fall for this. Try scholarly sources. First of all, don't be afraid of them. They can be very intimidating and they're harder to read, but they can be helpful because they're very, very narrow. The key to using these is to read the abstracts. Don't read everything. You can't. It's just too much information in these 20-page articles. But sometimes you can get a lot of really good data, a lot of good ideas. If you just kind of read that abstract, and then you can decide whether or not you want to go through all of that longer paper. Next, evaluate your source. Ask, is this a reliable source, right? Is this something, like, where is this coming from? Who's funding this? That's how you're really going to know. Lastly, don't limit yourself to scholarly sources either. There are excellent articles in New York Times, Wall Street Journal, The Atlantic, even Politico, sometimes BuzzFeed, all over the place, Los Angeles Times. They're all good. They're just not peer reviewed, which means that they're not reviewed by a group of people who are experts in the area. So a lot of times you can find things that are incorrect, but in general, these are excellent sources that will give you good ideas. How else can you avoid bias? Pretend to be a fact checker. When I was in college, I was a fact checker for a magazine called OC Weekly, which was LA Weekly's sister paper. And this took a lot of work. It was amazing the things you had to fact check. So always search for websites' funding, credibility, and bias, something that we always learned. Who's behind this particular thing? We always would look when I was doing research for the paper. You always have to go back and figure out, follow the money, right? Who's paying for this? Look at Wikipedia. I know people will say Wikipedia is not a good source. It's not a good source for your actual paper. It is an excellent source to look up authors, to look up websites, because they have all of the links and all the information so you can figure out very quickly where this is coming from if it is credible. Cross-check any claims for support. If something only comes up once in one particular paper, you know that you need to check that, because usually if it's not coming up often, if the idea is not across different sources, it's probably not correct, right? Some of you have probably seen that on the internet, right? So-and-so is dead. You look at the source, it says the person's dead. And then when you research and no other sources are saying that, you realize, hey, that was another hoax, right? It's similar when you do research. Again, look down the search list. Also, when you search something on the actual internet, Don't just take those first ones because Google knows you, right? So does Bing or whatever, Foxfire, any of those things, they know you. You're part of an algorithm, and they are going to choose sources that they know that you are going to want right away. So go down the list and see what else there is. Final thoughts. Don't let all of those voices derail you. That's how they said it. But what I'm saying is don't get overwhelmed. There's going to be so much research, and it's actually even worse than when I was younger. A lot of things weren't online. So when you went online to search, you kind of stuck with the ones that you had and that were the major newspapers, journals, etc., that were already online. Now, when you guys are researching 20 years later, everything is online, right? Everything. And it is very difficult. So you've just got to go step by step, get that research question, get that narrow topic, and then keep jumping off. Look at the papers, look at the summaries, look at the abstracts. That's how you're going to be able to handle all of that information. But how do you stay focused when you have to sort through and synthesize so much information? Make connections. Sort of like how I said, if something's only happening in one article and not in other ones, fine now. Try to make some connections, right? Use the same ideas and the same words. Organize your sources. Don't read too much. I find that students will often come to me, this is in the before times, with a stack of paper this big. And they're like, I've been through 35 articles. It's too much. You can't do it. You can't synthesize that much information for a 5 to 7 page paper. Start early. Start early. If you can finish up that paper a week before, then put it away for a few days and come back. It really, really helps you. Take breaks. When you're overwhelmed, get up, walk around. Don't continue to do it when you're completely overwhelmed. And try to have fun, because this can really be fun. I hated Nathaniel Hawthorne in high school, and I had to take this seminar in order to graduate in college. And I actually found it exceedingly fun to do the research, because I was able to look at the readings that I was doing through a lens that I found interesting, right? I was doing post-colonialism and more like a focus on racism and how Westerners had put their lens on a lot of Native Americans, like in that particular text that I was reading. And so I got to do something that I was interested in, even though this is a 200-year-old text, right? So find something that you like, right? Find a way to make this work for you, all right? And then that's is it. With that, I wish you guys the very, very best. If you wanted to watch this video quickly, that's fine. If you need to slow it down, that's fine too. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please let me know, and I will see you online.